Hi, my name's Kelly Pennington, and today I'm going to be discussing language shift. What is language shift? So I found that this is to be discussed as a movement with time in a community of language, so borrowed language that is rooted from another language community. This could be to me as how our ancestors have migrated, and within that migration, they have had to find new ways to communicate with each other. And I also found that bilingual languages also merge two languages and they find a preferred language that they would like to use for an object or just a word overall. And I also found to be true that with Spanglish, sometimes they would just talk sometimes in Spanish, sometimes in English, and that was just their way of forming communication. I found this nice video. It was a TED Talk about how evolution changes our language. And instead of playing the video, it's a 4-minute video. You're definitely welcome to watch it. I'm going to find some pinpoints that I found were very important in this. Now, in this TED Talk, the presenter was Alex Gendler, if that's how you say it, I'm sorry, how languages evolve. Now, during this topic, Alex had discussed about how thousands of languages, many languages, ended up rooting to smaller individual languages. And this was because during migration, new languages had split up because they needed to find food and shelter. And during this isolation, they created new populations and cultures. And with that, they were able to make these new words to form communication with each other. And so the development was completely different because they were separate, and the variation of words were also different, but with the same roots sometimes, so they were similar. Now, mapping languages to a common ancestor I found was interesting. So they called this the language tree, and a language tree basically is using, for example, American English and rooting this to try to find where our common language was from, or basically it's really difficult because many don't think that there's just one language that all these languages were formed from. So the difference between language and dialects is the simple fact that dialects come from a specific region when language is a universal form of communication. So that can be speaking, sign language, or physical form of communication. Some causes of this language shift I found were younger age groups have a bigger, I'd say, bigger value of their language, and they were able to pass this on with generations. And so these younger age groups can alter the way that a language is spoken. And so older age groups already know their current language and they don't have the need to change because they were already given the language that they grew up on, so their home language. And if they're an L2 learner, they're also just trying to learn a second language and not trying to mess with the forming. And to dive deeper into that, I found from this resource was that the risk of language changing is because younger age groups have pronunciation laziness and they use slang terms a lot. And so their personal lives, social interaction, the actual pace of change, so this would be during origins and migrations, and also the patterns, so regionally. I found some of these words from this resource as well, which was which and which, whether and whether. And I also found play and pray from what we had discussed in a previous lecture because I remember that L2 learners had a hard time pronouncing this with the L and the R. And these all have different roots, different meanings, but they sound pretty similar. And so this was one way of a language change variation within origins. My discussion question I found to be very interesting because with the which and whether, we found these examples of words that change and have different meanings but sound the same. So I was wondering if anyone other than the words that I have already discussed know of some words that have similar sounding but different meanings. And I also wanted to include another question. What do you believe to be some greatest common factors of language shifts that will continue to change? With this, I am meaning that where do you think with social or time or regional differences, do you think you could find how a word can be changed? Now, this could be with peers socially using slang. Is there any specific common factors that you can find that make this shift to be strong enough to change in a whole language, not just within a community? Thank you so much about learning language shifts and language change, and I hope that you would take time to watch that TED Talk because it was very informational for me and I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.